your face last year, me. That's the energy I'm trying to channel tonight. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. I'm Becca, and as of late, I've been reacting my way through eating disorder recovery alongside chronic illness, one video at a time. But today we've got a little something different because I'm getting ready to take a major step forward in my recovery that is something that I have been avoiding for a year and hoping that we could find a way to do things without it. And we're finally at the point where there's no other option. So I wanted to vlog today, one, because it helps me process and kind of holds me accountable, and two, if anybody else can relate, I want you to know that you are absolutely not alone. Before I get into the specifics of what this big change is and this big step that I'm taking, hopefully tomorrow's the goal. Little freaked out, but we'll get to that. I just quickly wanted to mention that I'm filming this on April 10th, and for the past month or so, maybe even 4 or 5 weeks, I have backslidden to a degree that I didn't realize I had in my recovery, both physically and mentally, and it was not intentional. We've just had a consistent string of things happen, whether... Why did I think I could film outdoors? There are so many buzzing insects around, and as soon as I come on the porch, they will 100% come towards me. So we're gonna try again. For literally several weeks now, we have had just one thing after another come in that has been really bad news or really heartbreaking, or just something that is like a majorly negative thing that has completely derailed me or thrown me into a spiral of grief or done the same to Roger or just made life feel impossible. I briefly mentioned in the reaction I filmed to Ren's Illest of Our Time that the reason it took me a while to get that uploaded is because I learned that one of my very close college friends unexpectedly died. And then we got news that someone close to Roger had died. And in between those two pieces of news, which we only got about a week and a half apart, there were several other things going on, not the least of which was the fact that due to our financial situation and due to the fact that eating disorder treatment, especially when you're trying to like assemble an outpatient team, a lot of who is not covered by insurance, it gets to be really freaking expensive. And we've been very fortunate. I want to acknowledge my privilege that I've been very fortunate to be able to have some outside family support throughout this process thus far, and we still have some of that. However, due to just life and circumstances, we do not have the same level of support that I have been so fortunate to have thus far. And honestly, I spent most of the past month or so in a really scary place thinking, okay, we can afford the team that I have worked so hard to get together, the team that I worked for almost a year to find, that is actually working really well for me right now. I love my dietitian, I love my coach, I love my therapist, I love my medical doctor who specialized in eating disorders and mast cell stuff along with my other chronic illnesses. Like, I'm very fortunate, and I'm working with a couple different psychiatrists on different side of things. I'm so fortunate to be able to have this team of individuals. However, I was facing the fact, I'm like, okay, we've only got the financial situation to keep this team for the next 3 months. If I go forward and I go through weight restoration and do all of that and gain weight and get myself to a place where I hate my body even more, I'm then going to lose all my support and not have any mental support as I'm going through this process. And then that will land me back probably where I was in 2021 when we were blindsided by relapse, except I wouldn't necessarily be blindsided by it because it would be clear as day what was happening. I just wouldn't have the support to deal with it. So that was keeping me really stuck and just stalled from making any progress or moving forward. And thankfully we were able to work through some things and figure some things out. And I know now I can at least keep my team mostly, if not all the way as it is, through the end of 2023. And having 9 months to do this stuff is a totally different ballgame than just having 3 months. So I'm exceedingly grateful for that. I'm also really freaking terrified still. About a year ago, actually almost exactly a year ago, I think it was on like April 14th of 2022, I shared a video, which I'll link up in the cards above, where I'm talking about facing your recovery boggarts. And at that point in time, the recovery boggart that I was talking about, the thing that personifies my greatest fear, was my feeding tube pump and the formula, which I call rocket fuel. So if I say rocket fuel, know that that's what I'm talking about. In that video, I was talking about how I needed at that point in time to get back to using my rocket fuel regularly so we could have a solid nutritional base, because despite the fact that I was trying to manage things with oral intake, the balance wasn't there. The full amount wasn't there to have the type of nutritional rehabilitation that I needed and honestly still need. And then shortly after I shared that video about recovery boggarts, I shared a video about facing your Goliath in recovery, because I realized in the boggart video, I talked about how my feeding tube pump itself and the rocket fuel and the tubing and all of that was my boggart. And then I realized later on the actual boggart, the actual Goliath that I have not faced, and I didn't post this video until I think September, so it actually wasn't the very next video, but you can go check it out. I'll link it above as well. But in that video, it became very clear to me that my recovery boggart is not necessarily just the feeding tube pump itself, it's weight gain and weight restoration and the fear and terror and everything that comes along with that. And if you are dealing with an eating disorder or disordered eating, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. So I filmed that a year ago, and just to quickly recap what happened as a result of that, I did not end up being being able to start my rocket fuel regularly again, despite the fact that that was our goal, because there were, again, multiple things that happened in a row, and I have chronicled these in vlogs from last spring and early summer, but I lost the dietitian I was working with. I like the one that I'm working with now a lot more, and she has been extremely helpful, and I wish I'd been working with her from the beginning, but she doesn't have a whole lot of experience working with rocket fuel and tube feeding because she is an outpatient dietitian. And now that I finally have a medical doctor on board who can at least spearhead the orders for that, my dietitian is able to work with me on it super well. But I didn't have that back then, so we actually weren't able to get it started, and then it took me, 5 or 6 months to find a therapist. I was without a therapist, without an actual doctor, without being able to do anything, just in survival mode and literally being stuck, going nowhere in a spiral of grief and anger and apathy, and not even anger, because I was so apathetic. I just didn't care. I didn't care about anything. I don't remember most of the months from January through at least April or May of 2022, except for the incidences that are forever burned into my brain where I feel like I was given ultimatums or pushed into things before I was ready, or other fun things like that. Quick ASMR break. Spilled it on me. Whoops. So even though I now have 9 months at least instead of just 3 months, and that does give me more time to work on this, it still is something that I need to attack as quickly as I can within the limits of what can actually be helpful for me, and not trying to do too much too fast and then freak myself out and then just give up on it altogether. That's kind of what we're trying to figure out here. Also trying to remind myself that even small progress is progress, and there's nothing really small about it if you're making progress of any kind. So we've been doing our best to manage with oral intake and see if I can get through the nutritional rehabilitation process and weight restoration with just that. Unfortunately, I have not been able to do that due to Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, also due to gastroparesis, also due to many other chronic underlying physical conditions. But whatever the reasons are, oral intake has not been enough. And before this month of just horribly tragic things happened, I had mentioned to my doctor, I'm like, okay, as much as this terrifies me, I think that it would be smart to try to utilize the rocket fuel again. I had been so against it, but I was just realizing, okay, we're getting into noise season, like lawnmower season, weed eater season, cutting down tree season. And can you hear that beeping in our neighborhood? This neighborhood has non-stop freaking noise. And the non-stop noise in this neighborhood is actually what triggered the blindsided relapse of 2021, because all that summer I was living in a state of horrible sensory overload and mast cell reactions. And one of the sensory things that I deal with is when someone is using a lawnmower or a weed eater or a leaf blower or a insert whatever loud machine here. My nervous system's response to that is to counteract the painful stimuli, because it should be innocuous stimuli. It shouldn't be painful. But my nervous system is so damaged that stimuli literally feels like my body is being plugged into an electric outlet and electrocuted the entire time that's going on. And my nervous system's only response to that is to lay flat in bed and scream and cry, because if I am screaming at the top of my lungs, it at least counteracts some of that horrible feeling a little bit. And it's not even that I'm choosing to do it, it's just my body's and my nervous system's natural response. It's the only thing that happened. It is now noise season again, and like I said about a month ago, I brought it up to my team specifically because I was trying to proactively set myself up for more success, because if we can get my mast cell stuff under control, a lot of the sensory stuff becomes more manageable too. But a month ago, I was like, yeah, we'll find a way to do it, let's do it, talk to my doctor. They ended up coming up with a plan, and then all of this stuff happened and I got frozen. I'm like, crap, I'm gonna lose all my support. I have all these horrible things happening. I cannot even think about this. Yet again, it needs to happen, because over the past month, with all of those things just kind of cascading, I have very much unintentionally just fallen backwards, both physically and mentally, like I mentioned, and that's scary, especially when I don't have a whole lot of time to take care of it. So yes, 9 months is more than 3 months, but we got to get this stuff done, which means I have to find a way to start this rocket fuel and go through the nutritional rehabilitation and weight restoration process, which freaking terrifies me. The video that I shared in September was kind of a realization that I had about what if weight gain is the one Goliath that I have to conquer to finally be able to reconnect to my faith in God again. Because for most of 2022, I was dealing with a crisis of faith that honestly I never thought would be something that I would deal with, and that's just kind of something that came to mind last fall. However, I still had a really hard time dealing with it. I was able to restore some, nowhere near fully what I needed to, but even that little bit was freaking me out, and now that I have fallen backwards a little bit, I know it's going to be even more difficult, but that also means it's even more imperative to find a way to do it. So this is Monday. I had an appointment with my doctor on Friday, and we kind of came up with a tentative plan to make this successful, to make it seem manageable, to make it successful, to not make it seem too completely overwhelming that I won't even be able to try it. And we agreed to a plan. I'm like, okay, we'll get that started. Initially, it was going to be on Monday because I had an appointment with my coach today on the calendar. We had to reschedule it for tomorrow. So now the goal is to try to get this started tomorrow. However, what I was kind of telling my doctor is I need this this to be done in as prescriptive a manner as possible. I need this plan to be written as if it is a prescription because I wake up every morning, I take my prescription meds, I take my supplements, I do that throughout the day, including right before bed. Like throughout the day, I'm always taking these things. They're not optional. They're non-negotiable. I needed this rocket fuel to be something that felt truly non-negotiable, not optional, and the way to do that, and I discussed this with my dietitian ahead of time, and she was totally on board with it too, is to make this as medical as we can. And while that doesn't necessarily work for everyone, treating food as medicine or nourishment as medicine, there are certain situations, at least for me, where that is a helpful approach. After speaking with Roger, after talking to my dietitian, after talking to my coach, after talking to my doctor, and explaining how this needed to be medicalized so that my brain can view it as something that is absolutely not optional and just has to happen, I wanted to come up with a list of things. So I was brainstorming and I was journaling, and here are some of the things I came up with. One thing that I really thought was going to be helpful is actually something that my dietitian said, and she's like, you know what, let's not frame it as food as far as that goes. Let's frame it as mast cell medication, because ultimately that's what this is, because the cycle of mast cell activation syndrome and an eating disorder, specifically restrictive eating disorder, you have mast cell activation syndrome, you restrict your foods to try to help the symptoms of that, but then that turns into eating disorder, then you're stuck in the eating disorder, and the more restrictive you get, the more the mast cell stuff flares again, and then the cycle, it just continues. So until you treat the nutritional baseline, there is really not much you can do to a certain extent to control the mast cell activation stuff, and that is something that is absolutely destroying every area of life not being controlled right now. So not only is this rocket fuel, do I need to think of it as a mast cell medication, but I need to also keep in mind that as I go through the nutritional rehabilitation process, I literally have evidence in the past, even though it wasn't due to eating disorder purposes when this tube was placed in 2017, I still have that evidence of having a better time, being better able to manage my mast cell stuff for a couple years there when I was more nutritionally solid and just had a good stable base of nourishment. And when it comes down to it, managing the mast cell activation syndrome stuff is honestly key to having any quality of life whatsoever, because like I said, it interferes with every aspect of life. Just sitting outside in our neighborhood, I can't even do that for long periods on windy days, because as the wind is blowing, I'm getting whiffs of fabric softener from people's dryer vents, and then I'm getting cologne and gasoline and all of these smells out there, including all the outdoor allergens and environmental allergens that trigger mast cell stuff anyway. I can't even enjoy being outside like that without going into a major flare. And there were times when it was better managed that I was able to handle things like that at least a little bit better, even if not all the way. So nutrition, we know, is absolutely vital and key to managing mast cell stuff, and I have just not been able to keep up with it enough on my own through oral intake alone, because that's the ultimate goal, is to help manage mast cell stuff, and it will help my overall underlying like physical baseline as well. But the mast cell stuff is something that we have 100% know we've seen improvement with when I've had periods where I've been better nourished through using my rocket fuel. And Roger also pointed out something that just kind of helped me a little bit, and that's that, yes, we want to control the mast cell stuff with better nutrition, but also the nutritional baseline. If it is not stable, none of my medications or supplements will work, whether it's mast cell related or anything else. So all of this guilt that I feel over the cost of treatment, over having to find ways to finance this, over the things that I don't feel like I deserve or that my eating disorder is telling me I don't deserve, the care that it is telling me I don't deserve, the only way to maybe alleviate a little bit of that guilt is to do the darn thing, go through the darn process so that those types of things can actually work and I can get to a better physical baseline as well overall, even outside of the eating disorder stuff. After talking to my doctor on Friday, we had a tentative plan and she was going to send it to me since the initial plan was to start on Monday, and I told her I needed it in advance, but I also knew she didn't typically check her email on the weekend, so I hadn't gotten it Friday night, and I sent her an email. I'm like, I'm a little worried that I haven't gotten this yet since the plan was initially to start on Monday. You know, just want to make sure, just wanted to follow up, make sure that I can have the plan. Then she sent the plan to me on Easter Sunday morning at about 8:30 in the morning. I didn't check it till about 11, and it sent me into a very literally 2-hour-long hyperventilating, screaming, crying panic attack. I could not breathe, because one of the things that we had kind of talked through is the need for me to not see something written on it like the ultimate goal is to get this number of cartons in at this ultimate goal rate and running it at that for however much time. I need to be able to focus on just this first step, one step at a time, and I had asked her to not add that on there, and granted, there's a lot of stuff that comes up in appointments and there's a lot of stuff that goes on, so I'm not like saying anything negative about my doctor here, but when the order came in, it did have that last line on there that said, with the ultimate ultimate goal of being this number of cartons at this rate for this amount of time, and I lost it. Like I said, hyperventilating panic attack, could not breathe, could not think, and was determined to just say, screw it all, I can't do this, because I asked for that one specific thing to not be there, because it makes it all feel so impossible to even think of what maybe it is the ultimate end goal, but even thinking about it and having it on the black and white paper right now is more than my brain can handle, because I need to just focus on this first right step of being able to freaking start it. Haven't been able to start it yet. I need to get to the place where I can start it, and we need to condense this into as small of a step as we can while still taking that step. So I basically immediately sent her an email back in the middle of this panic attack that was starting and said, okay, can you please resend this to me in a new email thread, because I have to delete this one so I don't see this. Can you send this to me in a new email thread, deleting that last little part, because even if that is the ultimate goal, I need to not see that right now, because it makes the whole process seem impossibly overwhelming to even begin. So it was Easter Sunday morning. Roger and I hadn't been able to do our own thing here yet. I can't physically go to church, so he had taken a few weeks off of playing in the praise band so he could have Easter at home with me. We were planning on him playing some stuff on the piano and me singing along with it and having our own worship session here on Easter morning. And instead, it got to start out with a 2-hour-long complete meltdown panic attack, which was not good for either one of us. I usually have some things that I can try to go to in those moments that may or may not help calm down. That includes some of my anxiety medication that I take as needed. That includes using ice as a sensory disruptor, whether I'm holding it in my hands, whether I'm literally rubbing ice cubes on my face, whether I'm dunking my face in a bowl of ice water, whether I'm chewing on the ice just to try to get that sense of cold to jar my nervous system and kind of get it focused on something else. Wasn't working. Sometimes I'll watch Friends and turn that on and can zone out. Nope, wasn't working. Sometimes I'll listen to music that is pretty reliable to help calm me down. Nope, not working. Literally nothing was working. I wanted to run away and just say, screw this, why did I ever bring this up? I can't do this, I'm out. I actually sent my dietitian a message to that and said, I'm out, I'm done, I'm not doing this, can't do it, I'm done, I can't. Knowing that that wasn't going to be the actual end goal, but that is all I could feel in that moment, was the terror and the wanting to run away from it. So what I ended up doing is something that also is usually pretty reliable, which is watching Michelle Kwan's Fields of Gold performance from the 2002 Olympic exhibition over and over and over again, and I literally watched it 10 or 12 times, and for the first time ever, it didn't help. For the first time ever, it didn't help bring me out of it or calm me down. I didn't know what to do at that point, because it always works, and it wasn't working. So my go-to show wasn't helping, my go-to music wasn't helping, my go-to skating program wasn't helping to watch, my medication wasn't helping, my supplements weren't helping, the things that kind of helped calm me down, I was trying to do all of them, none of my different skills were working, none of the temperature regulation stuff, it was all just so dysregulated and I could not get out of it. My doctor ended up emailing me back, said sure, no problem, I'll resend it. She sent it without that part at the end, but at this point, I was thankful that she sent it, and I do have the plan now without that completely overwhelming inlined on there, but it's still in my head. It's still in my head that I saw that, and I'm trying to work past it. I have talked with my coach about it. She's going to help me. Specifically tomorrow in our session, we're going to be focused on it quite a bit to try to help me get to the place where I can actually run this tomorrow night, because I'm most likely going to be running the rocket fuel for the most part overnight. Although, since we kind of have to start at a slow rate and get my body acclimated to using it again over time, we have to start off low and slow, so it'll take a considerable amount of hours, more hours than just the time I'm in bed. But starting it at night is at least going to help, because hopefully I can sleep through some of the angst and panic and terror that I literally feel coursing through my veins as I'm just talking about it right now. And this is something that has to happen. It's literally no longer an option. We tried it for a year without it. We tried to make it work for a year without it. We couldn't. So it has to happen. I'm just freaking terrified. So none of that stuff helped. My doctor did eventually email me back. I was glad that she did that. I was very thankful that she did that. She absolutely did not have to check her email and email me back again on Easter Sunday. So I'm so far above and beyond grateful and thankful for having the wonderful professionals on my team that I do have. But it still really shook me, and I was really thrown off. And while I was still really stressed, once she emailed me back, I was able to watch the Fields of Gold program 1 or 2 more times. It actually kind of did help me calm down enough to where my supplements and meds were able to also work and help a little bit. Roger brought me in some more ice to use for nervous system regulation. That also was able to then just kind of chip away a little bit, help a little bit. I then put NF's new song Running on repeat and listened to it probably 15 or 20 times, no exaggeration, because that song, I have a reaction to that song coming, but it's the last song on the album, so it will be the last reaction that I post, because I'm posting them in track list order of that album. But the song itself is essentially one long cathartic Healthy Self Response. And I sent Roger a text and I'm like, holy crap, this song. I knew it was powerful when I filmed the reaction to it, when I heard it the first time. I'd listened to it a few times. Didn't realize that it was going to be the thing that kind of helped calm down my heart rate, helped regulate my breathing, helped regulate my nervous system, and also kind of gave me that motivation and determination and power to keep going forward in recovery, whether it's with the rocket fuel or anything else. And if you're not familiar with the song, if you haven't heard it yet and you're having trouble accessing that healthy self side of your brain to talk back to the eating disorder voice in your brain, I highly recommend going and checking out Running by NF, because that's exactly what it is. It's basically one long healthy self response, and I will be using that in days and months to come. I am quite confident because it worked yesterday when none of my other go-tos were helping. So in addition to the list of things that we're kind of using to try to medicalize this process and make it feel as non-negotiable as possible, I'm also trying to set myself up for as much success as I can possibly have tomorrow during my session with my coach. And what that means is I have been working with a psychiatrist who has been helping me do at-home ketamine treatments for the past few months once our local clinic stopped being able to offer the infusions in January, and they were a huge game changer for me last fall. I haven't talked about it a whole lot on the channel yet, simply because I haven't been able to think through and put it all together. But last week I managed to take my dose several hours before my appointment with my coach, and we had one of the most successful sessions that we've had thus far. I sent her a message shortly beforehand and said, hey, can we make this a snack session? Because I'm feeling a little brave with this ketamine being active in my brain, and I'm feeling a little bit more open to it. So I kind of feel like it would be naive not to try to capitalize on that neurogenesis effect and try to reinforce some pathways that need to be reinforced instead of the old pathways of disorder that are so ingrained in my brain, it's hard to think through anything else. And not only was it one of our most successful sessions that we've had, but the fact that it was a snack session and I didn't melt down, and that wasn't even like the main thing of the session. We had our snack, each of us there. We were having just a regular conversation. We checked in once it was over, but like it went so much better than I thought it could, and that is 100% due to the fact that ketamine is helping my brain be open to some things that before it was just completely closed off to. So I'm extremely grateful and thankful for that as well. And my next dose was actually due yesterday on Sunday. I wanted to be able to have another session with her where the ketamine was still kind of actively working in my brain so that she can help me prepare for starting this rocket fuel tomorrow night. That's really hard to say out loud. Didn't think I was going to start crying, so I'm going to do my best not to. I'm just terrified. Just keeping it real here, I'm terrified. I know that it'll give me my life back. I know that it'll give me my personality back. I've literally experienced that before, even though in the past it wasn't from a place of eating disorder and needing to restore from there. It was chronic illnesses that we didn't know what was going on, which is why the tube had to be placed in the first place. But the very fact remains, once I was at a place of more stable nourishment and more solid nutrition, I had a personality again for the first time in months, if not years, and I know that that can be the case again. It's just really terrifying when I am having to come at it from this aspect of recovery and from this aspect of feeling like I was forced into giving up my scale and doing a bunch of this stuff a year ago and having to somehow be okay with that. I'm hoping that by planning the ketamine to be tomorrow morning, several hours before my session with my coach, then having that session with her, we'll be able to go over the list of things that I mentioned earlier as far as how we're kind of medicalizing this part of the process, and hopefully be able to brainstorm some other ways that we can essentially make this part of the process feel like I am in a treatment center, even though I'm very much in my own house and very much only able to access outpatient care because higher level of care is not an option for me with all of my medical issues and chronic illnesses. There's literally nowhere that can handle that, and the one place that could have would not accept me a year and a half ago because I didn't have the right insurance. So it's not an option. We have to make this work. So I need to try to come up with as many different things as I can to make this aspect of it feel as much like I am in a treatment setting as possible, because again, it will add to the non-negotiable, to the prescriptive nature, to the here's what you've been given, here's what has to be done, point blank in the period. This rocket fuel is your medicine. It is your mast cell medicine. It is your fill in the blank here medicine. And by planning on doing the ketamine before my coaching session, that also means that as I prepare to do the ketamine and then in the hours after, before my session, I'll be flooding my mind with recovery affirmations, with just affirmations in general. There's a really great track I want to mention. It's titled Healing Is Not My Purpose, and it's by Tony Jones. Go search it up. You will not regret it. It's something that I've started playing before I take the dose every time just to kind of get my mind into a positive mindset. It's just really encouraging and really helpful. But I'll have that. I'll have my coaching session where my coach will be able to help me kind of think through how I'm going to handle this and be able to kind of help me in the moment find ways to process this and connect to things like my actual values and purpose. And those are things that I feel very disconnected from, so I don't know how successful that angle will be just yet, but we're going to try to find whatever ways that we can, brainstorm whatever ways we can to make this process more doable. So that's the hope, is that I can prepare myself going into my coaching session tomorrow so that that can be a successful planning session to help me then take this major step Tuesday evening and night. And one other thing that is a huge help in this entire process is Roger has no problem setting it up for me, actually pouring the rocket fuel into the bag, setting up the pump, priming it, doing all of that. Maybe I'll be able to handle that in the future, but at this point that is something that in and of itself would freak me out enough to keep me paralyzed, and then I would just not follow through. So we're trying to put in plan every step that we can to make this as successful as it possibly can be. And I'm absolutely terrified. There's that whole quote, feel the fear and do it anyway. I'm not really wanting to do it anyway. All I'm doing is feeling the fear, but it has to be done anyway. So, not gonna lie, it's really hard. Even though all of that stuff happened a year ago with the ultimatums, with me feeling like I lost all of my autonomy, it's up to me right now to make the decisions that I can make in the moment right now, to use the time that I have left, the 9 months that I have left, the rest of 2023, to do as much healing as I can. I don't know if life will be worth it. I don't know if I'll have a life, really, a functional life, even if I go through all of the recovery stuff and get to that place where I'm weight restored, nutritionally rehabilitated. I don't know if my life will be a functional one, but I can guarantee that it won't be if I don't at least try. And while this isn't also a strategy that works for everyone, if I go through all of this and life is worse and nothing at all is better, I can always go back to the eating disorder. I know what that's like. I'm not saying I want to. The goal, of course, is to go through this stuff and then realize, hey, life can actually be worth it. There are actually some things here worth living for. But I'm not quite there yet, and I'm absolutely terrified of dealing with the changes that are going to come, the physical changes, the mental anguish that I know comes with this whole process. I'm just really scared, and I'm trying my best to cling to my faith and take those leaps of faith, knowing that there can be something better, even if I can't believe it, even if I can't see what it can look like. Really trying to believe that there can be something better there, and when I feel too weak to even hold on to God myself, trying to remind myself that He is literally carrying me along the way, and it's only by His grace that I'm still alive today. And I owe it to myself, to Roger, to my team who has worked with me for so long and is so encouraging and kind despite the fact that I have been largely stuck for the past year or so. I owe it to everyone, including myself, to finally figure this out and finally just go all the way through it and hopefully believe that there can be a better life on the other side. Alright, it is Tuesday, April 11th now, and tonight is the night that I'm supposed to start using my rocket fuel, which we are referring to as mast cell medication. I'm honestly still freaking out. I did not get to film what I actually wanted to film yesterday because there was not a single 10-minute period solid without noise, and that really gets my nervous system to where it's on hyper alert, and I'm literally in the floor here screaming and crying and unable to do anything else except that in response to the pain that that sound causes. However, I had an appointment with my coach today at 11, and our whole goal the entire session today was literally do more than anything, and that's working on the practical, the tactical, the day-to-day, helping you get through the stuff and take the actions and do the things. What we came up with in our session today to kind of make sure that I can just get this started, because I was talking to her last night and I was talking to my dietitian about this last week. She's actually the one that brought it up. She said, I think the hardest part is literally getting it started. Not that it's going to be easy once it's started, but literally just getting it started at first is the very hardest part because it's something major and something new, and I'm terrified. But that's why we came up with a plan, a very specific plan and different tactics to try to implement tonight to make sure that it works. And these are the things that we wrote down on it today. Number 1, start MCAS medication protocol by 9 p.m. and text my coach. That's the very first thing to do, because I told her, I said, I can foresee myself putting this off and making excuses saying, oh, I'll turn it on as I'm falling asleep, and then knowing very good and well that I'm falling asleep and not remembering to turn it on and just letting it go without turning it on. Not gonna let that happen because I don't want the eating disorder to have that in here. So that's a very important part, was having a specific time, and she helped me put that on paper, and that is the time. So we gotta start this no later than 9 p.m. tonight. I'm also really thankful that Roger is able to actually set it up for me, because that's another thing that I can predict. If I had to go through the process of actually setting it up right now, pouring the rocket fuel into the bags, hooking it up to me, hooking it up to myself is gonna be hard enough for me to do. I'm very grateful that he's gonna be able to take over at least the setup process, the priming the pump, the getting it all poured in there, so I don't have to look at the carton or think about that. I just have to hook it up to me and go with it. So I'm very fortunate that that is also part of the plan. And as always, I'm extremely grateful for the fact that I have such an amazingly supportive husband who wants to help in any way because he wants us to get our life back, and he is one of the main reasons I'm doing this because he deserves a better life with his actual wife and not his wife that's been co-opted by disorder, which is what the past year and a half plus has been. Number 2, this is something we went over in our session today a little bit, but I'm also supposed to go through and make a list on my own. A list of all the ways that my life will improve when I effectively treat the Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. And it's probably the chronic illness out of all of the ones that I'm dealing with that keeps me away from other people the most. That keeps me the most isolated because it keeps me from going into public. I can't even really be outside in our neighborhood without worrying about all the different smells that are going to be blowing into my face and causing reactions. So if we're able to manage this, then quality of life, sure, maybe I will always be debilitated by chronic illness to some degree, but I have precedent set, and I have vlogs on this on this old channel that Roger and I have. I have vlogs on it where I'm talking about this, about how my mast cell stuff was really bad. I had stable rocket fuel nutrition for several months. Then it was much more manageable, and Roger was able to cook things in the house. I was able to go out with him, and he ate some food from Chick-fil-A in the car, like things that were unheard of. These are things that can happen, and it can only happen if my body is nourished. And I also talked with my coach about the point that Roger made about how none of my mast cell treatments right now, or any of my other meds or supplements, but specifically since the Mast Cell Activation Syndrome is something we are trying to really attack right now, he pointed out it's sort of like we're wasting money. Now, he wasn't saying it like it's a waste to do it at all. He knows that this is something my brain needed to hear and would be able to latch onto and use that to propel me forward into action. But I don't want to essentially throw money down the drain by buying these medications and supplements to treat this Mast Cell Activation Syndrome and not taking care of the most basic level that needs to happen for those treatments to actually be effective and work. Nutrition is literally the foundation. If you have Mast Cell Activation Syndrome and a restrictive eating disorder, it's a cycle that doesn't end unless you stabilize the nutritional side of things. So that's number 2. I'm going to write out a list of all of the ways that my life can or will improve by effectively treating MCAS, which means getting nutrition stabilized, going through weight restoration and nutritional rehabilitation. I'm going to make a very specific video on that just so it can all be concentrated in one place, but I'm going to work on the list today. So stay tuned. I will be sharing that list in its entirety in a future vlog in between other reaction videos, but I think writing that stuff down is going to be a game changer. And then we went over some tactics for support actually when I'm hooking up tonight, just to try to get my mind focused on any of the things that it needs to be focused on and not on the terror that is kind of all consuming right now. My at-home ketamine dose was supposed to be on Sunday, but I pushed it to today because I knew I had the session with my coach and I knew that this was a goal tonight, and I wanted to have as much of that neurogenesis, rewiring neural pathways power on board as we're starting to do this tonight. And as far as the practical, tactical things go, I'm going to make sure that I listen to a few different songs that recently have been songs that either speak to the dichotomy between the eating disorder self and the healthy self, or like NF's new song Running. That song is essentially one long healthy self response, and I have played it on repeat probably 30, 40, 50 times over the past 48 hours just to try to get it in my head and focus on what I need. And the lyrics in that are so powerful, so I will be playing that song. I will also be playing High Ren because even though it's really intense, it has the back and forth dialogue nature. And then by the end of that song and music video, when you see him and the power he has when he stands up and is essentially claiming back and taking back the power that this inner critic voice and everything was always yelling at him, it's ultimately an extremely powerful song and helps me also move forward in my own recovery and taking those steps even when I'm scared and don't necessarily feel like it and have voices screaming at me saying, nope, you're not enough, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, you'll never be enough, you'll never be able to do it. I've got to find a way to do it anyway. I'll be using that to help me kind of just channel the like, hey, I'm taking back my life. This is my comeback year. 2023 is the year of Becca. Let's freaking go. Really glad that I waited to do my ketamine until this morning because my brain is able to be more open to the possibility of this. And I know that the doctor I'm working with, who's a specialist in this field, specifically with eating disorders and Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, I only have her guaranteed to work with through December. I don't want to waste the next 8.5 months of the year getting nowhere and not being able to take advantage of her massive knowledge of helping manage the mast cell stuff because I'm too scared to just freaking gain weight and deal with that recovery boggart and face that Goliath and finally conquer it in the hopes that I will be able to see some benefit, in the hopes that it will restore my quality of life. I do not want to waste another day. There's a line that's coming to mind right now. The song Another Day by Grace City, I've referenced it in vlogs before. It says, I don't want to waste another day and worry. I will be still and still know you are God. That line came to mind as I was saying, I don't want to waste another day because I really don't want to waste another day. And it also reminded me of one of the lines in a song Running that just says, I don't want to wait another day. I've waited long enough. I'm ready. I can see the sun. It's coming up. There's happiness on the horizon. I'm hopeful I can see the light. I've hesitated all my life. but I'm all done. I'm not going to dig into that right now because, like I said, I have a whole video reaction coming to that once I work my way through that album and post those videos. However, that is my anthem right now. That is what I'm claiming, and I will probably have that song on repeat more than any other tonight because I need the message that is in those words when my own healthy self voice is kind of hard to hear. And then one of the other things that I'm going to do is watch the handful of clips that Roger and I have from the times that we've been able to go to the ice rink in the past few to several months. We've gone a few times. We have some clips. We have me landing a Salchow for the first time since 2007. Now, it's under-rotated. Johnny and Tara would absolutely critique my grade of execution. Whatever, I don't care because my joy on the face at the end of it, this was just about 2.5 weeks ago. It was amazing. And just being on the ice is always the most healing thing for me, and being there with my husband makes it even more so. So I'm going to try to watch those clips just to remind myself that is something I'm shooting for. And yes, while we did go 2 weeks ago, I still have to be very cautious. I don't often fall, but it's because I'm being very cautious because I have osteoporosis at age 34 and can't risk horrible falls on that without it potentially being very dangerous and me not being able to heal. So further determination for me to get my body to a more well-nourished place so that even if something like that does happen, it can at least heal from whatever injury may happen more effectively, because right now if something like that happened and there was a major injury, I'm not sure I'd heal from it well, if at all. And because I've gone to it time and time again for 21 years now, I'll probably watch Michelle's 2002 Fields of Gold Olympic exhibition skate as well, because that is just something that almost always soothes my heart. Maybe it didn't take me out of the panic attack on Sunday, but it eventually did help me calm down once I got out of the worst of that panic attack. And then one of the other just totally silly but also very on brand for me things that we're gonna do. I identify more strongly with Monica Geller than I would like to admit in all of her eccentricities, and not always all the positive ones. However, she is one of the fictional characters that I'm able to sometimes kind of channel the energy of, and sometimes even put myself in the place of and kind of pretend that I am her going throughout my day tackling stuff. And there are a couple quotes from the Thanksgiving episode in season 10, the last season, where she wasn't going to cook Thanksgiving dinner because she and Chandler are going through the process of trying to adopt children. And then Phoebe, of course, stirs the pot and she's like, it's probably for the best that she's not doing it. It wasn't all that good last year. I think she's lost her touch. And Monica says, oh, you are so wrong. And Phoebe says, oh, am I? Am I? Well, then prove me wrong. Think about it. It'd be like you were competing against yourself. Monica's response is, that's my favorite kind. That's a quote that I've always come back to because that is so my personality. Everything in my life is a competition against myself. And if I can frame it as a competition against myself in a way that helps me move forward, and then also kind of channel the energy that she uses in a clip later in that same episode where she says, this dinner is going to be so great, in your face last year, me. That's the energy I'm trying to channel tonight. I'm trying to channel that kind of energy. In your face last year, me, because as Roger has proclaimed, as I have tried to proclaim, as I have told my coach, my dietitian, my therapist, 2023 is the year of Becca. Maybe the past 5 or 6 weeks have really been a backslide, and that happens, but it's time to get back on track, and time to take back this year, and time to take back my freaking life, because this has stolen too much of it. I don't want to wait another day because I've waited long enough. Like NF said, hesitated all my life, but I'm all done. Let's do it. And saying that right now out loud sounds a lot more confident than I feel. Maybe it doesn't because my voice is breaking. Maybe it doesn't actually sound all that confident now that I'm thinking about it and tearing up and choking up at the thought of doing this tonight and facing this paralyzing fear. But I have a team of wonderfully caring, empathetic professionals that I am so fortunate to be able to work with, and I owe it to everyone to at least give it as much of a shot as I can while I have access to it. I just do. And that includes myself. I owe it to myself. I don't know if it's going to be possible to live a life that I love, but I have had some glimpses in the past month at least, especially on this channel, because you all in the comments have just been so overwhelmingly encouraging. I don't even have the words for it. I owe it to everyone to at least give this a full try for this next 9 months and see what might just happen. And that's really hard for me to say because I really struggle to believe that it'll be worth it. But again, like I said in my reaction to JJ Heller's song, Only Time Will Tell. Only time will tell if it's going to be worth it, but also only time plus recovery action will be able to tell if it's going to be worth it. I can't know if it's going to be worth it if I don't take the actions for at least the next 9 months that I have this level of support, and hopefully at the end of the year, I'll be in a much better, different, unexpected place than I ever thought I could be. That would be the best case scenario. However, we're just taking this one step at a time, one day at a time, one bite at a time, one running of the rocket fuel at a time. We're not necessarily focusing on the end goal here because we're trying to get through the day to day to make this as successful as possible, because I know that's what works best for my brain. But it's also kind of exciting to think that it might be a possibility that by the end of this year, a lot of things could look a lot different in a good way, not in a bad way like they have for the past 2 years almost. I also wanted to quickly add that an hour after I finished my session with my coach, the Recovery Collective, the online recovery community that she founded, which has been such an amazing source of support for me, as has she herself, we had a group coaching call today. So So the topic of that was all about dialogue and eating disorder self versus healthy self, and the timing could not have been more perfect because it helped me do a dialogue during that session. I still need to finish it because my dialogues take me quite a while to get to a healthy self one, but I will get there. I'm so glad that the timing of that worked out well today because 1, I had the neurogenesis factor from the ketamine going on working for me. 2, I have this really major and absolutely terrifying step that I have to take tonight, so it was nice to have that group support and just to have some of the healthy self stuff reinforced as far as neural pathways go. But I'd be lying if I said that right now my eating disorder voice in my brain is not screaming, hey, you only have 5 hours and 43 minutes. 5 hours and 43 minutes before you have to be hooked up to this thing that you don't deserve, that you don't need, that you don't insert whatever word here. And it's extremely exhausting to have to hear that. So I'm gonna go try to blast music to drown it out because I can't get fixated on that right now because I gotta go through these motions. Gotta go through the motions. Gotta go through the motions. And trust that my team knows what they're doing because they really do. They are the specialists. I am not. I'm working with a doctor that I have immense privilege to be able to work with, and no way am I going to waste that. No, not gonna waste it. Not gonna waste this opportunity to actually see if I could have a somewhat functional life. Can't justify wasting that in any way or in any sense of the word. It's running, and I'm not handling this well at all. I hate this feeling. I hate this physical sensation. I hate thinking about calories being pumped into my body while I'm sleeping and doing nothing at all. I hate everything about this. And as soon as I got it hooked up and had it running, I sent my coach the text that I was supposed to send her, and I was freaking out. Roger and I were watching SNL. I couldn't even enjoy it because this is all I could focus on. I hate this physical sensation. I can't handle it. I was texting my coach about it. I'm just like, I hate it. How am I gonna do this? It feels insurmountable. I chose the word seemingly. Actually, I said it's seemingly insurmountable because I know that people say it's not, but it sure as heck feels like it is. She immediately wrote me back with some of the reminders that we discussed earlier. And I was talking to Roger, and he just kept saying, I know it doesn't feel right, but it is the right thing to do because you're working on getting your life back and our life back and being able to function outside the house. It's really hard to think about those things that are down the road when I'm in a moment like this because I just want to run away. This is terrifying, and this is only like the very first small step of the whole process. I'm not handling it well. I didn't get to finish filming a closing clip to this vlog, but I finished night 1, and I've been keeping the train going. I'm still terrified, still absolutely shaking in fear, but determined to find a way to make this work and give it a fair shot. See you in the next one. Take care of yourselves.